Chapter 1: Science plus Art equals Science Fiction. This film will serve as the first video platform into the class and introduce you to the basic themes demonstrated in the first half of the course. The goal is to take the concept of entertainment and reconstruct it through the framework of sociological document, and introduce students to the impact science and technology has had on the arts and humanities over the past 200 years. Science observes nature for patterns that indicate larger systems to determine how the physical world operates. To this end, science uses technologies like telescopes and microscopes to extend the gathering of data beyond that which is available to the five senses. Knowledge is thereby acquired through the intersection of science and technology that enhances human consciousness and which is then laid down in histories to accumulate generational wisdom. Sociology observes and records patterns to study the impact of social histories on the individual. The goal is to create a greater harmony between the individual and the society into which they are cast. When the individual is sufficiently enlightened, they pick up further observations on the world and contribute to the chainmail of knowledge. Since the human body has long since stopped evolving senses, the operational variable to this process is technology. While human beings are not innately dependent on technology, societies are. Whether through language or culture, individuals are bound together through social technologies. In turn, these social systems create technologically driven cultures that are often opaque and disorienting, and that serve social hierarchies that marginalize large portions of the population. This process has inadvertently produced a form of culture that attempts to reconcile the individual with larger technologically driven societies by metaphors contained within a humanistic framework, and that has been given the oxymoronic euphemism science fiction. The goal of this essay is to outline patterns in the history of science fiction and establish a basic guideline. Chapter 2: The Gothic Period, 1818 to 1945. Science fiction in this early historical phase characteristically enhances storytelling with macabre and supernatural elements to shock and tantalize audiences. Set in brooding and crumbling castles, science fiction of this time period takes place in the backdrop of a waning romanticism that was quickly becoming eclipsed by modernity. It is precisely this bridging of the past and the future that Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein so eloquently details, and that is why it becomes the first instance of science fiction and kicks off the Gothic period of our history. In addition to exploiting fears of electricity, Frankenstein ties into 19th century anxieties surrounding medical dissection performed in fledgling anatomy schools. In the book Death, Dissection, and Destitution, Ruth Richardson explores the objectification of human remains in 19th century England and their connection to hospitals. Modern medical schools were turning out surgeons that fostered an insatiable demand for cadavers for educational purposes. The meager supply of corpses produced by the public execution of convicted murderers was insufficient to meet demand, and so a black market came about to fill this void. So-called resurrectionist men created an underground trade in recently interred corpses dug up in middle-of-the-night sessions and sold on the black market. Frankenstein also attests to the emerging conflict between religion and science regarding theological taboos on creation. In Genesis, God creates Adam and Eve from clay and breathes life into them, begetting the human race through divine creation. The monster in Shelley's novel is born through an act of science, deploying the new technology of electricity, representing a secular analog to Christian parallels that people of the time actually found offensive, if not outright blasphemous. Inadvertently, Frankenstein burst the stereotype of the mad scientist hell-bent on reckless medical experimentation that fails to conform to social customs regarding birth, death, and transcendence lodged in Christianity. Another innovative feature of the Gothic period is the robot, such as the one found in the 1927 silent science fiction film classic Metropolis. Set in the future, the film details the story of an automaton secretly financed by wealthy industrialists to destroy union organization at their factories. A union organizer by the name of Maria is captured by a mad scientist who is charged with the task of transferring her essence into a mechanical simulacrum that will copy her physical features and sabotage the union organizing. Chapter 3: The Modern Period, 1945 to 1996. The United States detonated 2 atomic bombs over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6 and August 9, 1945. The 2 bombs killed between 129,000 and 226,000 people and ushered in the modern period of science fiction, which is characterized by 2 overriding fears: 1. Death by atomic bomb, and 2. Mutation by atomic radiation fallout. This period is also characterized by anxieties regarding a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union that were locked in an apocalyptic Cold War standoff that put a pall over the entire planet. Giganticism is an overarching feature to the modern period in science fiction history and seems to be the byproduct of the enormous destructive capacity of the original 2 atomic blasts and the ensuing mushroom clouds that had been photographed by the tail gunner of the Enola Gay and that had circulated widely around the planet. As mass media propagated images of the mushroom clouds engulfing the 2 Japanese cities, people were also made aware of the dangers of nuclear fallout that could be as lethal to life as the initial blast wave. Radiation poisoning was a new kind of fear that prompted many Americans to build underground backyard fallout shelters that would allow families to survive the first wave of nuclear strikes beneath cover of Earth until fallout radiation levels receded to non-lethal levels. During the 1950s and the 1960s, so-called creature features aired across the United States at local film theaters and TV sets featuring giant mutant monsters or aliens from outer space terrorizing Earth. In 1954, the film Them was released by Hollywood and featured a swarm of giant ants threatening to destroy the west coast of America. The Los Alamos National Laboratory was created by the federal government to secretly build the 2 atomic bombs that were eventually dropped on Japan. After World War II, the base continued to refine nuclear missiles and test them both above and below ground. The narrative for the film Them features an ant colony set in the backdrop to the Los Alamos atomic tests that are bombarded by radiation and mutated to giant size. Scientists are brought into the outbreak to posit a solution to the implicit threat of giant ants that have developed an appetite for human flesh. They quickly settle on a strategy of bug bombing the underground hive, which unfortunately does not kill the queen, who departs for Los Angeles to set up a new colony in the underground service tunnels and abandoned subway lines beneath the City of Angels. Martial law is declared in LA, and a platoon of infantrymen descend into the new nest with hand grenades and flamethrowers to put a permanent end to the pesky giants. Chapter 4. The Postmodern Period, 1996 to the present. In 1996, a group of scientists from Great Britain cloned a sheep they named Dolly that took the world by storm and ushered in the third section of our science fiction timeline, called the Postmodern Period. Mass media, politicians, and armchair theologians all took up the gauntlet to this new genetic abomination. Many feared Dolly would usher in a new era of cloned humans and designer babies that would take over the world. Religion was uniquely ill-equipped to embrace the arrival of a new generation of humans not cleaved from the image of Adam and Eve. Science fiction responded in kind and ushered in a new wave of stories featuring human genetic engineering, cloning, genetic splicing, and human-animal hybrids. One of the first films to embody the new biological challenge set forth by Dolly was the film Gattaca that was released in 1997. Set in the not-too-distant future, Gattaca tells the story of Vincent Freeman, born a natural birth in a world dominated by the emerging trend of genetic engineering. In a hospital scene detailing his birth, a nurse snatches a drop of blood from his heel and reads his genetic destiny. To the horror of his parents, his genetic prognosis is especially grim, predicting his death at the age of 30.2 years from heart failure.
60% probability, manic depression 42% probability, attention deficit disorder 89% probability, heart disorder 99% probability, early fatal potential, life expectancy 30.2 years.
30 years. Having learned their painful lesson, Vincent's parents consult a genetic engineer for their second son, Anton, that is born without the genetic burdens that polluted his older brother. The future laid out in the film Gattaca is an especially dystopian one, divided between invalids born the natural way and valids produced through genetic engineering. An invisible yet impenetrable scale of discrimination is visualized, in which Vincent, who is not genetically engineered, is viewed narrowly through his genetic prediction and subject to discrimination on every level, including education and employment. An early scene from his childhood shows young Vincent being shut out of kindergarten for fear of illness, sickness, and lawsuits. In a later scene, illustrating his adulthood struggles, Vincent submits to a job application to Human Resources, while a voiceover details the way employers glimpse illegal peeks into the genetic makeup of their workforce by using saliva samples from envelopes or cell residue from handshakes. In short, invalids are permanently locked into a future underclass in a world gripped by eugenics euphoria that would have made the Nazis green with envy. Chapter 5. Conclusions. Science plus art equals science fiction. Just as there are patterns observed in nature that can be identified and quantified by science, so there are patterns in culture that can be identified and quantified by the social sciences. The integration of science and technology into the social world has created significant challenges to the individual and the social hierarchies in which the individual is required to perform. The individual must adapt to these new accelerated technoscapes or risk becoming obsolete. Science fiction is a unique cultural form that creates humanistic documents that externalize technology into metaphorical monsters that threaten both the individual and the dominant social order that can become overly alienating. This video has identified 3 broad periods in science fiction history to attempt to categorize over 200 years of cultural innovation. The Gothic period is characterized by crumbling castles, reanimated corpses, and robots set to terrorize human existence, and is historically bracketed by the years 1818 to 1945. The modern period is characterized by atomic bombs, mushroom clouds, and giant mutated monsters that threaten global destruction between the years 1945 and 1996. Finally, the postmodern period is populated by images of human cloning, genetic engineering, and hybridized creatures that destabilize our very notion of what humans can be, and it started in the year 1996 with the cloning of a sheep named Dolly.